Kia ora koutou and welcome to the Hawke's Bay Business Growth and Support Virtual Conference. My name is Angela Caves, the Digital Events Manager for Digital Boost. Thank you for taking the time out of your day today to join us. It's wonderful to have you here. With me this afternoon is Tessa Williams, Employment Liaison Advisor for Connected in the Hawke's Bay region. Connected is our collaborating partner on this conference, so thanks Tess for joining us. Today is our third day of the conference and it's our final day and our final session of the conference. We've had some fantastic information shared by all the organisations involved. If you have missed any of those sessions, I encourage you to watch the recordings at a later date. We'll be sending out links to the playlist after the conference wraps up. As well as being recorded, this session is also being live streamed to Facebook, LinkedIn and YouTube, so welcome to our viewers on those platforms. I'm going to hand over to the lovely Tessa now. She's going to share some webinar housekeeping with us and then introduce our presenter for this session. Thanks, Tess.
Kia ora koutou and welcome again to this session with Employment New Zealand and VNOD from there. Just before we get started, if you have any questions about Employment NZ or what you see today, then you can pop them in the Q&A or in the chat, or if you have any thoughts or technical issues, we can help you out in the chat as well. I'm really excited to have VNOD on today. Employment New Zealand are one of those resources that I love because it supports our entire region, all the way from those businesses in Waipukaro up to Wairoa. No matter how remote you are, I think it's awesome that you can tap into these resources. So I welcome VNOD to speak about Employment.govt.nz. Take the stage, VNOD.
Cool. Thank you very much, Tessa and Angela. I'll now just organise the screen share. Just before I do that, just introduce myself. So I'm VNOD Daya. I'm a Senior Engagement Advisor, work at the employment side for MB, and I've been with the team for about 6 or 7 years now. And just thank you for the honour and privilege to be able to talk to you all today. And thank you very much to Digital Boost and Connected for the opportunity to participate. It's and just sing out organisers if we have some technical things as we go. So let's share the screen.
It's a recurring theme that we're all getting an initiation of fire with Zoom.
Okay. Can you see the screen right now, the Employment New Zealand?
Beautiful, you can get started.
And you can see the mouse here. All right, so welcome to this presentation from Employment New Zealand. I'm sure you'll find it very helpful and useful to know the information and resources we've got to help you. You can see here Employment New Zealand is part of MB, the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment. Just a bit of an overview, a roadmap where we're heading today. So we're going to explain how Employment New Zealand can help you, covering an introduction, employment rights and responsibilities, resolving problems, tools and resources, information and support, and questions at the end. And you can sit back and relax because we will, in this presentation, there'll be references where you can get to more information, and I'll highlight the phone number for the service centre. If you've got any specific questions that we don't get to cover today, we can cover it there. And just sort of a bit of context for the presentation is that we can help give information about particular rights and responsibilities, but we can't actually give legal advice on any particular points. Next slide. So Employment New Zealand is about fair business and fair workplaces. So that's our vision, and that's what we believe in, what we want to bring to New Zealand. So we believe in fair workplaces. Our work is about lifting compliance and capability, and our vision is for workers and workplaces to realise their potential. So what that means is that as a team, we try to make it like a fair and level playing field, so fair and compliant employers like you can prosper. Some of the things you may have seen about Employment New Zealand in the public domain, got some pictures. So here's a picture of our website that gets about 6 million visits a year, and it's your go-to place for free trusted employment information. Over here, we've got a whole range of booklets and leaflets, which are available in printed and also online format. We have a very active social media presence. So with Facebook and LinkedIn, we have more than 200,000 followers. We've got some services which help produce those fair workplaces, the employment mediation services, which is about resolving problems, and we'll explain more later, and the labour inspectors, who are about fair workplaces. So those are some of the things you may have heard about us in the public domain, especially when the labour inspector are bringing enforcement to non-compliant employers. These are some of the teams that we have that can help support you. We have a service centre, which is our Employment New Zealand helpline, and its toll-free number is 0800 20 90 20, toll-free. It's available during business hours. You can contact them also by email. There's a form on the website, and that helps with about 100,000 employment queries a year. We have parts of the organisation to help resolve problems before they become big, or try and resolve them on a voluntary basis, such as early resolution and mediation services. We have the Labour Inspectorate, who I alluded to. They are like the our enforcement side, so we have to try and put pressure on those illegal and non-compliant employers to get them to obey the law. And labour standards officers also look at employment issues. We have a team called Employment Systems and Assurance. So what that team is about is trying to get those minimum rights and responsibilities embedded into the employment system so that it becomes part and parcel of the whole environment. And then we have a team of employment information and education people. That's a team that I'm part of, and we have representatives in Auckland, Wellington and Christchurch, but we are nationwide because we travel around the country visiting stakeholders and doing events. And let's start with some common issues. And just ahead of the presentation, I had a look at some information about the lovely Hawke's Bay. It's a place that I've been to for holidays and visits and work, and it's a beautiful place. And I'll try and put some sort of context in these issues in terms of the Hawke's Bay area. So one of the key issues that we see is that there's a lack of employment agreements. So an employment contract is a foundation to a fair and legally compliant employment relationship, and that's a big red flag when there is no employment agreement, and there must be a written employment agreement by law. We often see the use of casual contracts. So casual work for employment is when it's like a one-off employment type of situation. But when that work becomes recurring, like on an ongoing basis, then it should move to being a permanent form of employment, whether it's part-time or full-time. Contractors versus employees. I'll expand on that more, but this is a real big issue. So it's lawful to employ a worker as a contractor or employee when you've used the right working relationship. What regretfully happens is that some employers, they hire workers as a contractor rather than an employee to get out of the employment relationship and employment responsibilities. And this is not acceptable. It is not lawful. There's issues around getting the entitlements for annual holidays and other types of leave. So another type of one that's come up quite a bit recently is use of sick leave. public holiday entitlements. We've got a few public holidays coming up, so that's quite current. When employment ends, a fair process must be followed, so redundancy, resignation issues, and then migrant exploitation. So as you'd probably know, in the Hawke's Bay, with all the orchard and vineyard type work, you probably have a lot of migrant employees coming into the region to help. Well, unfortunately, while most employers are good, there are lots of significant examples of migrant exploitation. So this is a focus area for the government to try and improve that area. And with the current unsettled environment about COVID-19 in the workplace, that's also been an area where there've been many issues, and the rules and the law have been explained quite carefully by Employment New Zealand. And the good news is that we have lots of current information on our website, and I'll refer you to that later, so you can use that as a go-to place for information. So let's cover some of these foundational things we need to be a good, lawful, compliant, productive employer. So who is an employee? And an employee is anyone who has agreed to be employed under a contract of service. That's the specific legal term, to work for some form of payment, including wages, salary, commission, or piece rates. So when we hire our person picking apples on a piece rate basis, they can be an employee. Employees include full-time, fixed-term, seasonal, casual, and part-time employees, employees on probationary or trial periods, home workers, and people who have been offered and accepted a job. So in the Hawke's Bay, here it is, it covers covers seasonal workers, and it covers workers who you're asking in to come in on a casual one-off basis. And it also applies when you're offering, in that process of offering the job. What it does not cover is a self-employed or independent contractor and a volunteer, who's someone who does not normally receive a reward for working. So employee versus contractor, how do you decide? Well, sometimes that distinction can be quite difficult, but challenging to figure out. If you take the case of Uber drivers, in some countries around the world, they're treated as an employee, and in some other countries, they're treated as a contractor. In New Zealand, currently, we treat Uber drivers as a contractor. So here's a little bit of explanation to help you try and decide when you hire your next worker if they should be classified as an employee or contractor. Point 1, focus on the real nature of the working relationship. So the real nature. Use these legal tests below to help you tell the difference. And let's use the example of we are in business together and we're looking to hire our gardener to keep our grounds tidy around our workplace premises. So we look at the intention test. Is it the aim for the worker to be an employee or self-employed person? So a contract for services rather than an employment agreement implies a contractor. So if it's more like the person's intended to be working for themselves, then we think of them as a contractor. Control versus independence. Will they be supervised? So the more control over their work hours, methods, and methods, etc., implies that they are an employee. Integration. Will they be part and parcel of the organisation? And so if they're not, then this implies it should be a contractor. Sorry, that's just a typo there. And the fundamental economic test is, what is the total situation? So if they work for many businesses for fees, that implies a contractor. So you'd basically look at your situation, the worker, look at the points for employee and contractor. And if you feel confident, then go forward. If you're not, then you may want to get some professional advice and feel welcome to reach out to Employment New Zealand we can help clarify the rules and maybe refer you to people who can help you get that distinction right. But you do want to get it right up front to help you avoid potential problems and liabilities down the track. Here we're talking about employment agreements or employment contract. Like I said before, it's a foundational thing for a legally compliant employment relationship. All employees must be given a written employment agreement. So the intended employee, even before you hire them, should be given an intended employment agreement, one that they can look at, they can negotiate on or try to, and they can ask questions about in a reasonable time and get some advice before it's signed. And then it should be kept current and up to date and available for the employee. And here's some of the things that it must have by law. So it has to have the names of the employee and employer, a job description, which is the duties, the place of work. It's becoming more interesting now because of the, people working from home, the hours of work, also becoming more interesting with a lot more flexible work, wages, salary, remuneration. As I mentioned before, it includes things like how they're being paid, if it's on piece rate or commission. For public holidays, it has to note that you always get paid time and a half if you're an employee working a public holiday. Employee protection provisions. That means in certain industries, the employee is protected. Whoops, just go back here. The employee is protected if the business is sold. So that's called employee protection provision. And there's special rules there which help to have a fair process to resolving employment problems. That's got to be noted in the employment agreement. Next, we're going to look at some key minimum employment rights. In employment law, there is there are things which we call key minimum employee rights, and those are things like rights and responsibilities that are bare minimum that can't be contracted out of. So it means that even if they're not in the employment agreement, they always apply. And there's a whole lot of them, and we're just going to focus on some of these, and the website will have a lot more information, but there are all sorts of things that you should be across. And we've also got some employment modules to help you be across them. So the first one is about the minimum wage. At the moment, it's $21.20 per hour gross for adults. And this just went up recently since April this year. There's also rates for trainee workers and starting out workers. Public holidays. So in New Zealand, we have 12 public holidays per year, and any employee who works a public holiday has to be paid time and a half. And in certain circumstances, if it's a normal working day for that public holiday, for working that public holiday, they're also entitled to a time off in lieu at a later date. Annual holidays, sometimes they're called annual holidays, sometimes it's called annual leave. And this is going to be looked at to be changed this area with the Review of the Holidays Act. But the key thing at the moment is to know is that after a year of service with the same employee, all employees are entitled to 4 weeks paid annual holiday. And there's lots of other rules around it, like encouraging people to take at least a certain amount of public holidays a year and having a right to cash up a certain amount of annual holidays. And then sick leave. So this recently increased to 10 days per year after 6 months. And as we know, in the current COVID environment, it's really important for more people having to take time off for health reasons and having to look after family members. Bereavement leave. So bereavement leave is applicable, another one of those ones that's applicable after 6 months. The employee is entitled to either 3 days or 1 day for each bereavement. The 3 days is when that someone has a very close relationship to the employee. So it was their child, their partner, their mother, their father, that kind of thing. The immediate family, brother, sister. 1 day is if there was a special relationship. So you'd put in employee puts in their request for leave for the one day, saying it's a special relationship. Could be like the extended family or someone who's a close family member, but it's a very close relationship there, and one day applies. Domestic violence leave, that's after 6 months. And unfortunately, if you're a victim of domestic violence, there are up to 10 days available per year. Rest and meal breaks. These have to be provided where it's reasonable and practical, and it depends on the hours worked. So if I was to go and get my job in a couple of months' time, I decide I'm going to go down to the Hawke's Bay and help pick some apples, for example, and let's say I work a typical 8-hour shift. Well, based on the schedule and the law, for 8 hours, you're entitled to 2 rest breaks, which would be like your morning tea and afternoon tea, typically 10 minutes. So in the morning and afternoon, that's 2 a day, and they would be paid time. And then I'd be entitled to a meal break, at least 30 minutes a day, maybe more, and that is unpaid time. So that allows me just to get enough rest and relaxation and do my personal things during our work time. And that's something that has to be provided where it's reasonable and practical. Unions. So all employees have the right to join a union, and employers aren't supposed to influence that right for the employee to exercise that right they've got. And dismissal and redundancy, they're both ways of a job being terminated. So dismissal refers to when someone may be dismissed for misconduct or serious misconduct, so they're not doing their job properly. And redundancy is when the person is going to lose their job, not because of their fault, but because the job is no longer needed. These things can both be lawful, but the employer must follow a fair and proper process. Here's a few of the key responsibilities that employers have, and I'll just take you through them. They're very important. So employers must provide employees with the written employment agreement. Good news is we've got a tool here called the Employment Agreement Builder, which I'll show you soon. They must provide a safe workplace. So when I get my job out there in the Hawke's Bay apple field, picking apples, I should get proper training and supervision about how to do that, any protective gear that I need, and it should be an environment that covers a safe workplace. It's all the responsibility of the employer. The workplace should be somewhere where the employee is not bullied, discriminated, or racially harassed. And it also means having a workplace that supports this, positive workplace that supports these things. And also, a fair process must be followed if any disciplinary action is followed. Now, finally, this is a very, very fundamental thing, which we strongly encourage all employers to be across, to maintain proper wage and time records and holiday and leave records. So make sure that either yourself are doing it, your professional advisor, or however you want to set it up, you have systems and processes that all your legal records are being recorded and maintained. That's going to help you make sure that you comply with all your legal requirements, which is like the employment requirements, the tax requirements, and the ACC requirements. If you don't get that sorted now, then later on that could create lots of big problems for you. So this is a foundational thing to get them set up. And you might be surprised, there's a lot more records that you're required to keep than you might naturally be aware of. And we've got information on that on our website, which you can have a look at after this talk. Finally, if you've been following the news recently, there's been something being discussed called fair pay agreements. So this is something that has the potential to make a major change to pay agreements in New Zealand. Point 1, so I'll just take you through the slide. So the government has introduced fair pay agreement legislation into Parliament. The fair pay system will bring together employees and unions within a sector to bargain for minimum terms and conditions for all employees in their industry or occupation. So say, for instance, I got a job working in a supermarket, and under the fair pay agreement, it was decided that as a shelf picker and storer, this should be the rate. Under the fair pay system, that would apply right across the whole industry. Okay, so New Zealanders will soon have an opportunity to make submissions to comment on the bill during the select committee process. And the system is expected, if the bill passes, that is, to be starting at the end of 2022. And here's a link for more information, which you'll be able to see again when you see the recording of this presentation. Resolving employment problems. So while most employees and employers are good and fair, sometimes problems do arise. This is talking about that. Under employment law, there's an assumption that if a problem arises, the employer and employee should discuss this as soon as possible and try and resolve it. And on our website, we've got information on how you can try and resolve problems and our various services. So I'll just touch base on some of these different pathways, but don't worry about the complexity. You just need an overview of it. Main thing is, when you do have something, look on the website and contact us for what might be the most appropriate pathway. So if it's a small and informal type of thing, then the early resolution team can have a look. That's a phone-based service, and they can look on a voluntary basis. If it's something that requires a bit more of a semi-formal structure, then it could go through a mediation service, and that's a two-way service. That's a voluntary service, and then it leads to something like an agreement, and then that's registered, and that becomes compliant for the two parties. Sometimes the things are like the breaches of the minimum employment rights and responsibilities that we discussed. So that can be referred to the labour inspectors, and if labourers think it's a higher priority or very important or strategic, they can investigate, and then those people, they get named and shamed in the media, and penalties and things enforced on them if they're found to be legally non-compliant. So sometimes when things come through the mediation side, there's a dispute between the two parties, they can't resolve it. So it can then be those two parties may decide, we haven't been able to resolve it between ourselves, and they might go to the Employment Relations Authority. It's like an informal tribunal to try and get an adjudication on it. And if that doesn't lead to the successful conclusion, it can go up next to the employment court, and in certain grounds, ERA decisions can be appealed to the employment court. And in some of the issues, the employment issues relate to human rights, and they go through the Human Rights Commission channel. So most important thing is that try and resolve your problems early, and then contact us to see what might be the best option for you to resolve that problem. So early resolution, as I've just said, it's that phone-based service. It's free, it's from MB, it's informal. We go and talk to the employee and employer, try and see if something can be agreed voluntarily to try and fix that problem small before it becomes big. And let's have a look at some examples of what is suitable for early resolution. So this is from an employee's perspective. If they have concerns about their working relationships, hours, pay or leave is being changed without being consulted, health and safety concerns, or the employment's been ended or maybe ended through restructuring, redundancy, or dismissal. If the employee feels they have been treated unfairly or being bullied, if they've got concern, and so here's an example here of a issue from an employer. If the employer has concerns about the employee's performance, they could go to early resolution. And for both parties, if either the employee or employer feels an issue could be resolved promptly by you or the employee or employer with a little help from an independent resolution facilitator. And early resolution can also help with some smaller current COVID-19 workplace issues. Another great service that we have is the employment mediation service. So mediation is a voluntary process, and it's when an independent mediator helps the parties work through issues and develop solutions together. So MB has a free service that's quick and has an 80% plus resolution rate. You don't have to use the MB service. You can go and use other suppliers, but our service is free. And it's from MV, of course. And often it's a way to resolve issues before going down that path of looking at going at the Employment Relations Authority or the Employment Court, which is obviously very expensive. So lots of information for you to be across, but the good news is we have tools and resources, lots of tools and resources to make this very easy for you and very convenient. So let's take you through some of these images. Here's news. So we have lots of information on our website. We have got some training videos from YouTube on our YouTube channel. We have got a newsletter that you can subscribe to. It has 175,000 subscribers. So that will keep you up to date on employment law changes. The Employment Agreement Builder. So that's a tool, and you can access it by going onto our website. There'll be a link. You go into the Employment Agreement Builder, and then you pick the clauses that you want for your template. It'll tell you which ones are mandatory, and then you have a legally employment agreement, a template in Word, and you can use that for all your employees in your business. And this tool has been very, very successful since its launch several years ago. It's had around 900,000 uses. And then maybe you want to train some of your managers, or you might want to train some of your staff on some of these key basic minimum employment rights and responsibilities are. Well, we've got online and printed publications that can help you. Here's a booklet here that's probably quite good for a small business owner or a manager. And here's a little leaflet, which is ideal for employees. And these things are available in lots of different translated languages as well. Another thing that we have is a suite of learning modules, which you're highly encouraged to access. So that will give you free 24/7 hours access to free learning. Let's take you through the suite of modules that we've got. We've got entry-level modules for employees on their rights, and an entry-level one on employers, which is coming out very soon. We've got advanced modules on topics which have an employee and an employer versions. So the advanced ones, there's about 7 topics, which I will run you through. So working arrangements, it's one of the first ones you want to look at. It looks at things like employment agreement, employee versus contractor, so you get that right at the beginning. Employment agreements, that's about all the things you need to know when you're hiring someone, job letter offers, job descriptions, what should go in the employment agreements. Pay and wages is about paying people right, the minimum wage, commissions, piece rates, etc. Hours of work are about the rules which are about that. Annual leave, holidays, which is about annual leave and public holidays, and other leave is about things like your sick leave, bereavement leave, and other types of leave. And finally, the resolving problems is about how you can resolve some of those problems. So the reason why we strongly encourage you to do the modules is that they each take about 20 to 30 minutes, and it's good for you just to have a good overview of your rights and responsibilities there. And that way you can avoid having any problems about being compliant with the law. You'll know that when you're not really sure about something, you can either sort it yourself or go and get some advice. Look on our website or get some professional advice. But because you solve the problem early, it prevented you from having a big problem down the track later. It's a great use of time. Here's an example of when you follow the links, you sign up for the modules, and this is the dashboard that you'll see. So over here, you can see my name, and when I toggle between here, I can get access to employee and employer modules. I can see them all. And here you can see the range of different modules that are available. So basically getting an access to 24/7 learning whenever you want it, and it's all available free to you because it's been funded by the taxpayer. When you complete each module, you also get a certificate. So if you had some managers running your business, you might want them to have completed some of those modules, and then they can send you the certificate they've done to show you, hey, that they've completed them. Now, sometimes you need a bit more than just that information. You also need some support. So let's go through some of the ways that you can be supported. So first of all, key thing to remember is that you can contact Employment New Zealand. You can visit our website, and it's our URL, Employment.govt.nz. We've got latest information about COVID-19, and the information is always kept up to date and current. So it's your go-to place for information. We've got the basic information about rights and responsibilities, and information that's been translated into lots of different languages. Sometimes you need a bit more of a service than just the information when you're contacting Employment New Zealand. So that's when you might want to contact the service centre. Now, the reason why it says general inquiries is they can't give you legal advice. They can discuss like a rule and tell you what the rule is and discuss your options, but they can't actually tell you specifically for your case situation what the legal advice is. And they have a free telephone interpreting service for over 180 different languages called Easy Speak, and there's the toll-free number 0800 20 90 20. That's a great service, and recently they won one of the awards at MB that we have for our staff. The other service we'd like to promote to you again is the early resolution. It's that free phone-based service to resolve employment matters. It can resolve many of them early, quickly, and informally. And that's the web page to go to see about more information. So finally, I think I'll stop screen sharing and see if there's any questions and see how we might be able to help you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Vinod. It was incredible to see the support. And every time I listen to you, I learn something new. We only have one question,
Cool.
And you've actually already answered it, but I'll humour you by letting you answer it, and I'll put a link in the chat. Where can we get support for making sure our employment agreements are legal?
Oh, I see. Well, if you go onto the website, we'll send you, you might be able to find it. I'm
putting the employment agreement builder in the chat right now, if that helps.
Yeah. Okay, so that's quite an easy thing for you. We've used the employment agreement builder tool. If you use it, it will basically allow you to create your own template for a legally compliant employment agreement. And it tells you which clauses are mandatory and which ones are recommended. And that one has had nearly like 1 million uses so far. Yeah.
Thank you. We've just had a last minute question come through as well. Do Employment New Zealand help find a job?
Yeah. So the short answer is no, because our focus is on helping people with the employment rights and responsibilities. But in terms of the organisation and government that helps people like learn about careers, that's Careers New Zealand, and there is a government job site called jobs.govt.nz, which lists jobs for government. Also, if you are like a client of MSD, they probably have lots of services that help people into employment. But so the short answer is Employment New Zealand ourselves don't, but other agencies in the government family can help people.
Would you like my job? Because that was a brilliant answer. Absolutely. Go to MSD, and MSD Work and Income can help you even if you're not on a benefit. We had the work broker on earlier, and yeah, come to us as Connected, and where we can help anyone you're working with, anyone you know yourself, find a job as well. That's it from the questions. Thank you so much for your nod, and I'll pass back to Angela.
Thanks, team. Thanks, Beanod. That's some great information there. It's great to hear all about how Employment New Zealand are supporting our business community. It wraps up our session and our conference, actually. So I just want to, before we close, I'd just like to make a couple of acknowledgements, if that's okay, and then I'm going to invite Chad, who opened our conference on Tuesday afternoon. He's going to close our conference formally for us, but I'll just make those acknowledgements, Chad, and then we'll be right with you. Firstly, to our presenting organisations, on behalf of Tessa and myself, thank you for the mahi that you do. It's so encouraging to see the breadth of support that we've got available to our business community. Secondly, I'd just like to thank everyone who has attended our sessions, either via the webinars directly or via a live stream. It's been a real pleasure to bring the conference to you, and I do hope that there's been some gold nuggets of information in there that you've been able to take away. Thirdly, I'd just like to thank the wider Digital Boost team and the wider team from Connected for partnering with us to collaborate on the conference. Thank you for your patience, understanding, support. You know, it's hard to navigate around these trying times where things can just change at the drop of a hat. Thanks to our friend COVID. So thank you for your perseverance with that. And lastly, but absolutely by no means least, I'd like to thank my collaborating partner. Thank you, Tess. I'd just like to, offer you, and it's just been a pleasure to have you join me on this journey. You have been the backbone of support and wonderful encouragement throughout these last few months together. It's been just a pleasure to work alongside you. So thanks, Tess. Chad, I'm going to hand over to you to bring our conference to a close. Thank you again for joining us this afternoon. And just a quick reminder to our audience that Digital Boost YouTube channel will house all of these sessions on a playlist for the Hawke's Bay conference. So Tessa has just dropped that link in there. Thanks, Tess. Thank you, Chad.
Thank you, Angela. Kia ora, good afternoon, everyone. It is my pleasure to close off our virtual conference this afternoon. Hope everyone's enjoyed the conference. I'd just like to thank Angela and Tessa for allowing me to be a part of this kaupapa. Ai, tēnei te mihi nui atu kia koutou katoa, kia inoi tātou. Kia tau, kia tātou katoa, te atawhai o tō tātou ariki o ihu karaiti. Me te aroha o te atua, me te whiwhi ngā tahitanga ki te wairua tapu, ake, āmene. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Thanks, Chad.
Thank you.
Thank you, team. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful afternoon.
You too.